Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson, Michael Grumbine, and Dan Coates.
Dan Coates?
Hey.
What? You know,
Weird intro.
that was weird. It's so long. All those extra words at the end. I didn't know what to do with myself. But you know what that makes me think of, guys?
Oh no. Just for everyone listening, this was not vetted by us beforehand.
You can't have this without. Okay, they do the sound forever.
So I'm definitely Chevy Chase.
Cut it off.
Amazing.
But that's
I'm
one of
definitely
the
Chevy
greatest
Chase.
comedies of all time that couldn't be made today, but still.
Well, it's good to be back. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's been a long time. I didn't even look. When was the last time you were with us? Let's see. It was not a full year ago.
On Fairy Stories.
That was the last one. So it was like August, I think.
Did you finish up on Fairy Stories with us?
We did On Fairy Stories,
Okay.
and I think that was it.
And then we started doing the film changes, and then we did like Eldarion and Erendis and Christmas stuff. And all that. Yeah, man.
Dan was like, the film changes. Peace out.
Yeah. It's like the film is perfect. Well, today we're not going to be reading Eldarion and Erendis. We're not going to be reading The Hobbit. We're not going to be reading the House of Errol yet. However, we will be catching up with Dan, and we're going to get. There's a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of news that's come out lately for Tolkien in the media today, including the Hunt for Gollum, War of the Rohirrim, and just the other day, Tom Bombadil in the Rings of Power.
Yeah, it's the best news. Some would say the best news has been.
Some would say, and then I would poison them. No, okay. So here's what we're gonna do, Dan. You now will have a taste of what it was like for Michael and I to know The Lord of the Rings was coming as a film after having read The Lord of the Rings and being steeped in the lore.
Yeah.
Now you get to react like we did to The Hunt for Gollum and to War of the Rohirrim and to, well, The Rings of Power. But that's not a reaction. That's just a par for the course of what we're going to talk about.
Well, no, I mean, look, there are gut reactions, associated with nausea that I think you could say we can react.
That yes, true.
So you guys brought me back for pain.
That's right.
Pain.
Yeah.
To the
No,
pain.
to the pain.
Princess Bride. One of the best movies of all time.
Oh man. Okay. So first though, and I'm sorry to all you new listeners, if you haven't heard Dan, you deserve to go back and listen to at least our whole read through of the Silmarillion with him because he brought a lot to it. And so Dan, we have to bring this back because I need to ask you what you've done over the last 8 months or whatever. And you know what that can be? That can be
Dan's Big Thought.
We spring it all on him.
So Dan, your big thought is, where have you been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, what happened?
I have been working.
What?
I don't know what you guys do.
What is that?
I'm working.
Yeah, I've been working.
Huh.
I still work at the Babylon Bee, doing podcasting and things like that.
Sounds sweaty.
So
yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of new developments really.
Well, so I know how was your whole read through of the histories of Middle Earth? How did that go? Because I know you were going to finish that in a couple months, right?
Oh, that's
right.
Yeah, that's. I think I'm like 99% through it. I still have a little bit left.
Maybe 99.5.
99.5 for sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I still haven't gotten through all of it yet. It's more like reference, but hey.
But you know what? I just watched the Rings of Power, so
wow.
So you're on up. Yeah, everything.
Yeah,
everything in the Second Age is top of mind for you.
Right. It's like the primer on the Second Age that we all deserve.
Right.
All right. Well, then, since you live with margin in your life, and I don't, I did do some preparation for this episode, and I thought let's start with your reaction, and we can talk a little bit about what you think. And like I said, from the perspective of now knowing so much about Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, history of Middle Earth, all the stuff that goes into that, what is your take on this? On the Hunt for Gollum, right? Peter Jackson Hollywood Reporter said he's working on 2 new Lord of the Rings movies. One of those is definitely The Hunt for Gollum, although it was kind of implicated there might be 2 Hunt for Gollum movies, and it's a working title. But when you heard this, when you saw this, when you read this, what was your reaction? What did you think about The Hunt for Gollum? The idea that they're making this.
My initial reaction is this, it seems kind of like The Hobbit, where there's like one sentence in the book or one paragraph in the book, and they're like, hey, let's make it into a movie. And then you just saying that right now made me think of, that's what they do with The Hobbit. They're like, let's make it into a trilogy.
Right.
let's make a series of 7 movies about this. And
right. Did we say 1 movie? We meant 6.
Yeah. So obviously it strikes me as a cash grab. It's a valuable property. They're gonna milk it for all they can get out of it. It is good that they're bringing back Peter Jackson, because I think if anybody could make something that's somewhat faithful to Tolkien, it's Peter Jackson. He's shown that he can do that. But yeah, I'm not hyped. I'm not excited. Like, I'm not going to go buy a ticket and, or whatever this is, go see it right away,
No, I know.
Yeah. In my mind, the only way this has a chance is if it's 1 movie. And even when I say it has a chance of not being bad. If it's more than 1 movie, it's terrible automatically, because they're just going to be stretching and putting in a bunch of stuff that is ridiculous. My children still reference old viral site, How It Should Have Ended, the movie,
the YouTube channel too.
Yeah, and there's the famous one on The Hobbit, How It Should Have Ended, and there's this scene at the end where in the little cartoon summary of how it should have ended, Tauriel, whoever, female Evangeline
Nick Groom's favorite character.
Right. That she's like trying to insist to everyone that her love for Philly or Killy the dwarf was real, and Gandalf's like, that wasn't real, that wasn't love, and she says it was, and he says, what was her last name? What was his last name? Killy the dwarf. And everyone starts, all the characters start laughing at her, and she says, is it real? And so my kids, the mockery of the Hobbit movies is more front and center and real for them than the movies themselves. And I think that's what will happen. But even if they pull it off in only 1 movie, if they're only going to do 1 movie, the problem is, of course, how are they going to fill a movie with source material? We know Gollum gets tortured by Sauron, so you got that. We know Gandalf tells a couple paragraph story about how he was hunting Gollum, and then he found Gollum, and it was
Aragorn who first found him, right? And
Aragorn first finds him, then they take him back to Lothlorien, to Mirkwood, and I think it's and then the Wood Elves lose him, and then that's it. Like Gandalf puts the fear of fire in him, which is like, is it Gandalf? Is he torturing? Has he broken the Geneva Conventions?
I know. And I think it says in there he starved and gagged him. So we'll see Aragorn starve and gag Gollum.
Yeah.
riveting content for 2 hours, I'm sure.
But here's what they thought. Okay, 1, we can get Viggo Mortensen back. Which he said in this article in GQ magazine that came out the other day. He did say, when he was asked, back when The Hobbit was first announced, you said that you would return to play Aragorn if the story was right and the character actually did something. With the recently announced The Hunt for Gollum, which does involve Aragorn, would you consider returning? And he said, sure. I don't know exactly what the story is. I haven't heard. Maybe I'll hear about it eventually. I like playing the character. I learned a lot playing the character. I enjoyed it a lot. I would only do it if it was right for it in terms of, the age I am now and so forth. I would only do it if it was right for the character. It would be silly to do it otherwise.
And by silly, you mean
he doesn't know what the story is ultimately. I think
it would make him a lot of money.
Yeah, so, he doesn't know that this story happens before the movies that he already filmed.
Right. Which is, I guess what you could,
you can de-age people nowadays.
Yeah. So, but a whole movie where you got this de-aged character, the de-aging. You might be able to pull that off for a few scenes, but at a certain point, I don't know.
You know what?
They just do a CGI Aragorn from
perfect
using the first movie.
Just like we got. Oh man, no. You know what they got though is they'll definitely bring back Legolas. That's another thing. And Toriel, and Thranduil. Right? They can bring back all these characters, and it becomes what The Rings of Power tries to do, is just throw all the characters people know, in the hopes that they'll watch it for that reason, not for the reason that it's actually a good story.
Speaking of throwing in characters that people know, just to try to score some points.
Yeah.
Do we have anything to talk about with regard to Tom Bombadil?
Well, yes, but first let's talk
Chip.
about the one that's
All
a
right,
little
we'll stick
more
with this one.
interesting, a
All
little
right.
more interesting, and that is this: the War of the Rohirrim. There's still no trailer for this. It's supposed to be released, I think, June, like between June 9th to 14th, somewhere around there. There's an anime event in France, I want to say.
Right, and this is so I'm sure we'll get some, and this is anime film about Helm Hammerhand, he of Helm's Deep fame.
Yes.
And the backstory in anime version of this, which I'm sure will not be woke at all.
So, in short, the story is about Helm Hammerhand, I believe, a Dunlending named Wolf, if I remember right, comes through and asks for his son's hand in marriage to his daughter, who they named Hera, even though Helm doesn't have a daughter's name. The daughter's name is never mentioned in Tolkien's story. And then he gets angry because he thinks the guy's fat and ugly, and he punches him, kills him, and then that guy's son comes back and to destroy the Rohirrim, and I believe he takes over Meduseld and the Golden Hall, the entire city. They retreat to Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep is it built then, or is it already constructed? It's essentially fortified then, I think.
Yes.
And so then they defend there, they defeat them, and they retake Meduseld. So it's kind of, at least it's a nice contained story, not like the Hunt for Gollum. So I would love this in a real action one. Dan, what's your reaction to this being anime, to this being told as a story that's, its own story? It's not really something that's part of the prior Lord of the Rings.
Well, before Dan answers that, did I hear right that the story would be focused on this daughter, Hera?
Yes, the word they used, she's a tomboy.
Daughter.
Although
they actually use the word tomboy?
I believe so, tomboyish. Yeah.
So my initial reaction to that last piece of information is that
wait,
good.
that would be this.
Dan's big thought.
Your
So
big
my-
thought on the word.
my big thought on the War of the Rohirrim is if they make it like Galadriel, that's not going to be good. I'm obviously interested in the Rohirrim. Rohan is a very interesting place in Middle Earth, and it definitely is. It definitely can serve as the setting of a fantastic story with big battles, and you see the origins of like Helm's Deep. How did it get there, and why is there this big fortress here? There's the potential for a really interesting story, but when details like that get leaked out, where it's like, oh, it focuses on the daughter and she's a girl boss, you're like,
Yeah,
that's not good.
Here we go again.
No. So I don't know anything else about it other than what you just told me. I've been living in a cave since the last time you talked to me. So
A cave that makes money, unlike our cave.
I just wish. What do you think of it being anime? Like, if you could have anime versus live action, would both of you take live action over anime?
Not every time. Depends on who the creator is. I think you can do. I think you want to do anime in making sure that it is indeed a Western style anime. There's different styles of and you're gonna. But as far as the idea of telling a story in that format, I actually don't have a problem with it if it's done well. It really is a lot about the artist.
But saying I don't have a problem with it is better than I think this is a really good choice to make it an anime.
Oh yeah, so here's why I think it is sometimes a better choice depending on the story and so. Live action is really hard. It's hard to bring Tolkien's world to life well. I think Peter Jackson did it. I think Rings of Power fell in their face, and I think the bar is much higher when you're talking about live action. So if you're going to tell a story and it's not a Uber production helmed by someone. I guess pun intended there. We talk about Helm Hammerhand, helmed by someone who actually has the books in their heart. Then I'd rather it go anime than not. Also because you can pull off a lot of look at this shot here. Like you can do a lot of really big sweeping shots in anime in a way, depending on your art style, in a way that is compelling and epic. Anime is not just anime is not just looking, people squinting at each other with overly expressive faces and yelling. So it depends on the style and depends on Yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say about that.
I always feel like anime is more of a I don't know. It's not as effective as a live action. So anything in anime will never be as good. Anything in cartoon, like in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, Rebels, all that sort of stuff. I always found that less than. And so they're starting off for me at least, from a less than perspective, which means that maybe, you know, my expectations are lowered. So perhaps it can reach, you know, the difference between where I started my expectations and where it actually ends up might be good. But I just don't enjoy, like, we had, especially because we had it and they're clearly making it like Peter Jackson's. And so what they're doing is they're rotoscoping, you know, in a sense, Peter Jackson's whole film into anime, but they're giving it a style. And so we're going to be judging it on what Peter Jackson did in live action and looking at it like, man, this would have been a great live action movie if it was an anime.
What makes you say they're doing that? Have you heard that that's what they're doing? They're just going to be...
They're not rotoscoping actually, but they're taking all the scenes and all the shots. I mean, that is exactly metal-celled from Peter Jackson. Like the shape of that hill is the same shape as in Peter Jackson's films.
Oh, okay.
They've pretty much said that it's in that world. I mean, Eowyn is going to be the one starting the narrative. Like Miranda Otto will be doing.
Miranda
so
Otto,
they're already connecting it that way.
So they're doing the member berries thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess,
I don't think this will be less than Rings of Power. I think this will be better than that.
But will it be better than Strong Bad as anime? Do you guys remember that? I don't know.
Yes.
Strong Bad.
Okay. Anyway, that was bad. Sorry. Strong Bad.
I burninated that from my memory.
Oh man. So let's then get into
more pain.
So get into what Thomas has wondered, since we called ourselves the Three Amigos. He had to find out the answer to this question.
In a way, all of us have an El Guapo to face someday.
Is the Rings of Power...
Shyness might be their El Guapo. For others, a lack of education might be their El Guapo.
For others, the Rings of Power might be their El Guapo. Right?
This is our El Guapo.
This is our El Guapo. He's not a really mean guy who wants to kill us, but this is our El Guapo. So Thomas in our Discord, he had to ask us, is this our El Guapo? All right, so Dan, we saw the Rings of Power trailer. There you go. It's right there. You took a look at it really for the first time right before we recorded. And I don't think we have to watch the whole thing. Nobody wants to be subjected to that again. What was your take on it after you did watch all the episodes of the first season as well? You were forced to do that.
I was forced to do that. I was on assignment with you. The three amigos watched all of first season of Rings of Power. And now that I've seen the trailer for season 2, it feels like they didn't learn anything that might improve the show. So,
you know, in my spiritual tradition, we believe that suffering here on earth can help us after we die.
Yeah.
So you all have gotten out of a lot of purgatory by watching season 1.
So if you watch Rings of Power, you get time taken off, right?
Yes. Exactly. It functions as an indulgence. Essentially. Yes. That's what we do. That's what we missed,
guys. Oh my gosh. We get right into Protestant versus Catholics. We're right there, right back where we ended up.
I don't know why you said it, Protestant versus Catholics. We're all Christians here. I don't know.
I didn't make a distinction between being Christian or not. I just said my indulgences usually have
this part.
Pineapple and cheese on it. But
well, you know what I want to see? I want to see a juxtaposition of this face here on screen with the Sauron as Anatar face, like when he's looking at
let's find it real fast.
Yeah. So you like flip back and forth. It's like, so that was Sauron right when he left Austin Ethel. So Sauron right when he left Austin Ethel was the Sauron of that first shot. And then that's how the elves saw him. Like the elves watched him, like they took care of him, they healed him, and then he left. And Galadriel was like, it's Sauron. So she knew Sauron. And now here he is. And if you're an elf, I mean, that's clearly two different people, right? this is obviously not the same guy because of the wig. I don't know. Like, it's so dumb to me. Suspension of disbelief is apparently not a thing for these people.
The comments on I came here for the wig in the YouTube video for this were pretty awesome. It was great. But you've read, right, in the time since watching The Rings of Power, we finished the Silmarillion.
Mm-hmm.
We dived deep into fairy stories. And we examined through 1.5 hour long discussions each episode of The Rings of Power. What, like, after watching this trailer, right, it was hard to take it all in. And here's the dumb thing, is like, it doesn't tell you anything about the plot. Like, if you watch the Game of Thrones trailer, it spends the first half talking about how they're all going to war and all the different characters going to war and how they're going to go to war. And then the last, like, 1/3 of it shows them all going to war. And I'm like, oh, that's like a plot in a trailer for the new Game of Thrones, whatever, House of the Dragon. Here, it doesn't tell us anything.
Well, this is the spinny shot from Avengers: Age of Ultron, right? Like, they're just doing the exact same thing, like the spin shot. Like, all the Avengers are like coalesced together and being surrounded and pulling out their weapons. Like, we got Hawkeye on the bottom left there, and so it's. I mean, this is, to me, they're just telling me that Ultron's come back. That's the plot.
Okay, so now, and I was trying to allude to this earlier, and I mentioned it, is that now that you've read through the Silmarillion, we spent all that time, 1 year and a bit, going through the Silmarillion. Do you react any differently to these than you think you would have, like to all three things: Hunt for Gollum, War of the Rohirrim, and even the Rings of Power? Although we knew that your reaction was already baked in, but for the other two, like, do you think you react any differently, Dan, based on your knowledge now, or how you experienced the history of Middle Earth?
Well, yeah, because I think once you read Tolkien, you realize that this isn't just like unexplored territory that Tolkien didn't get to. He actually wrote lengthy treatments of all of these time periods that they're trying to explore through film and different media. And it's not like it's, Tolkien, he didn't really delve into this area too much, so let's explore that and tease it out and see what that would be like. Now I watch everything and I go, well, that's different. Okay, that's not what it is. That's not what Tolkien wrote. Oh, that character is complete. Where's Celeborn? Like, I just have all these thoughts pop up, and I can't enjoy these new things. And basically, I'm blaming you guys. You guys ruined it for me.
I accept the blame.
No. You have to blame Tolkien, because what you said is exactly what I said when I saw The Fellowship of the Ring. Exactly, right. Well, this is not here. I didn't see this guy. And why is Galadriel acting like some sort of weird necromancer when she gets all crazy nuclear? And what happened to the Barrow Wights? Where did they get their what Aragorn's just giving their swords? And why is Arwen rescuing Frodo? Right, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And R.I.P. Glorfindel.
Yes, right. And so you understand now, right?
I understand your pain.
As Faramir says to Frodo Baggins, I think we finally understand each other.
Yeah.
Which wasn't in the books either. And it still doesn't make sense to me. Nobody's been able to explain it to it. Okay, well, we'll stop there.
No.
You meant Filmamir, right?
Filmamir. We still haven't gotten to that change. Maybe, Dan, we can bring you in on a couple changes at one point for the parts where you actually really liked it and I actually really hated it. Because Michael and I, we agree way too much. We had one major disagreement. Okay, then let's bring that up. That one disagreement that we had.
Oh, we're going to bring that up again?
Let's bring that up, Michael, because you know who's right and who's not. Yeah, which one?
I do know. I just don't like making you look bad.
Well, you can keep trying. I'll give you all the time in the world you need for that.
Is this Legolas walking on snow?
No.
Not yet. No. Okay. That's the Hobbit. We're not going through the changes in the Hobbit. We'd have to go through the things they did right in the Hobbit instead to save time. The
Hobbit? Legolas walks on snow in the Fellowship.
Oh, no, sorry. I immediately saw Legolas.
What kind of nerd are you?
Yeah. Yeah, one that's been too affected by the Hobbit. Sorry, you're right. We haven't gotten the Legolas on snow yet. So no, the one is the wizard duel.
Yep. Oh, yeah. The Battle of the Wizards.
And my take was Tolkien, a physical wizard's duel isn't something that would happen, as there's no precedence for it anywhere. Michael's take was, well, Gandalf does use physical things. He does fight physically, like you mentioned, bringing down the door in Durin's tomb in Moria. And
Well, that was about the specific magic part. Gandalf
Yeah.
fights physically all the time.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't use his staff. It's not like I'm going to use the yin yang of the two staffs and make him spin around on the floor and then cast him to the ceiling. That kind of stuff. What was your take then on the wizard duel being such a right in the books? It was he was arrested, or like the guards came and took Gandalf. Like that was pretty much it.
Gandalf didn't put up a fight in the books.
Yeah. But in here, right, there's a whole
he
fight.
He doesn't talk about putting up a fight anyway.
After reading through the Lord of the Rings, in detail now and knowing the films, like what's your take on it? Looking back on it, settle our dispute.
So imagine the wizards fight, and so let me add a couple points.
Here we go. Here we go.
Just to we want to give Dan a little bit of context, right? So a couple points where if you're gonna, so I said a sacrilegious thing in the Lord of the Rings circles. I said that I did not think that Tolkien put a lot of effort or did a great job of telling us what happened. Like we learn about what happened about Gandalf and Saruman's confrontation at Orthanc. We learn about it at the Council of Elrond. Gandalf was just telling a story, saying, this is what happened. I went to Orthanc. Saruman tried to convince me to join the dark side. I wouldn't join the dark side, and so I got arrested and put up in the tower. And then I talked to moths. Oh wait, no, I didn't talk to moths because that's not a thing. So it was just a third party related. This is how it happens. Which, by the way, is exactly the same as the hunt for Gollum. Like that whole part of it is also just related as a couple paragraphs in the Council of Elrond. Anyway, the point is that my point was here we have the Gandalf that is like. This is the work of his lifetime in the Lord of the Rings, the books, the culmination of everything he's been brought to Middle Earth to do, as we see at the end, because he goes back to Valinor after the ring is destroyed.
How much setup do we need for this, Michael? Come on.
Oh boy. All right. My point is Gandalf, the Gandalf of the books was not one that would have been gone quietly into the tower when Saruman uses force against him when he won't turn to the dark side. The reason being, he has no idea he's going to get saved by an eagle. It's all a point. Like this is his life's work, and he's just going to like quietly get arrested and then come out a year later, and everything will have gone to pot, and Sauron will be winning with Saruman's help. He would have fought, I think, and as he does in so many other places in both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And so the question is, if he's fighting, what does that look like? In Jackson's vision, that fighting looks like, my claim was, them using their wizard staffs as an extension of their will. So they basically, it's kind of like telekinesis of some kind, where they're basically, or force pushing, if you want to turn it into another genre, but they're using their will through their staffs and striking each other as one would strike, from a distance. I don't think that's that terrible of a way to show a wizard's duel. And I don't even think that they wouldn't have dueled. They have a different kind of duel at the once Orthanc has fallen and Gandalf and Saruman face off, and it's the chapter called The Voice of Saruman. And they have a different kind of duel, a battle of the wills, and Gandalf literally breaks Saruman's staff with a word in that, or a couple words. Your staff is broken, so 4 words. And so I just thought that it wasn't like Tolkien-esque the way Peter Jackson did it, but I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was kind of, now there was the very end part, which Jonathan always kept going back to. He's like, but what about when he spins him on his head and around and up? Like, yeah, that was stupid. That was silly. But the theory of wizards fighting, I think, wasn't that bad in that way. So that was our disagreement, and we went on, kind of like this podcast.
And so you guys need a tiebreaker.
Yes.
What is
exactly what we need
here?
And my point wasn't precisely that they shouldn't have done it that way. Like it was just too physical and too long. They didn't need like like you've referenced The Voice of Saruman. That was much more in line with how I think Tolkien represents wizards in Middle Earth, and to make it so physical, so action based, left a very bad taste in my mouth. So.
All right, so we can say more, and we have, but we're not going to do it anymore.
One more time, Dan.
Because Dan's going to break the tie.
Right, with this.
Dan's Big Thought.
So there's actually notes in Tolkien's papers that Christopher found. He gave them to Peter Jackson.
You learned this in your full re. Oh, right.
Yeah, and these notes told
That's
Peter
awesome.
Jackson exactly what to depict on screen.
I'll pay your $20 in 5 minutes. Yeah.
It was either that or he could have depicted them doing like a Russian slap fighting.
That would be great.
And So Gandalf got knocked out and he lost. So
right.
that's why he spent a year in prison.
I know Michael was suggesting a rap battle instead too, but I thought
Rap battle.
Yeah.
That's right. My great love of rap. Yep.
Yeah, I guess if I'm thinking about the way it's depicted in the movie, that's how I would envision wizards fighting. But you know, is that more my understanding of like things from Dungeons and Dragons and the classes in D&D? Like, am I importing that into it when I read Tolkien? Am I putting that as a lens on top of it? I don't know, but
yeah. And so I even brought part of that up. Like I brought up the fact that Gandalf creates fireballs of a kind in The Hobbit, where he
takes the pine cones
and it isn't just he catches them on fire and throws them. They're like these projectiles that explode when they hit. And so Gandalf does do Dungeons and Dragons type stuff, not quite as ridiculous. So in the Wizard's Duel, they don't like shoot beams of energy at each other or anything like that. And that's what I liked about it, was more subdued and less sort of visually blasting all over the place or something silly. But they found what I thought was a decent middle ground to have wizards fight. And anyway, and I stand by the fact that Gandalf can exert force at a distance in enough, like he breaks Saruman's staff with words.
I'm not arguing with you on any of these points. I'm simply saying it was way over the top. It didn't need to be as physical and slapstick as it was.
So you guys
for the record, you should go back and listen to the episode, because I think Jonathan is already backing off his position a little bit. I think he was a little stronger in our episode.
I don't want to put Dan off and not have him back ever.
So just to clarify,
it was still so stupid. I hated it. That was the part of the movie that ruined it for me. That was at that point I was like, well, this isn't the Gandalf that I know. This isn't the Saruman that Tolkien wrote. And at that point, it was all downhill. There you go. How's that, Michael?
So you guys both agree that Gandalf put up some kind of a fight. He didn't just say, "Oh, I guess I'm arrested."
Well, Jonathan doesn't. I just think it was more in Gandalf's character to fight at that point. I don't think that was what happened in the book, because Gandalf in the book makes no mention of a fight, and he does seem like he kind of just goes along and gets arrested.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that part of the book precisely, because I'm wondering if he also submitted to Saruman because he was the head of the order.
No. Saruman very clearly tries to corrupt him, and Gandalf says
Gandalf knows who
Gandalf
he is.
Calls him out on it and says no, and then Saruman just basically says, "Well, okay, then you're done for." And he doesn't say that, but he arrests him.
So I think at that point you have the wizard duel, like Peter Jackson says.
Yeah, I think it's more in Gandalf's character, but I don't think that's the way Tolkien wrote it. I just think that's more in Gandalf's character.
Okay, well, clearly next week this podcast will be just me. So we'll be talking about War of the Rohirrim without Michael and Dan, because they just ruined the whole story, because that's not what Tolkien wrote.
Because echo chambers are the best. And that's what we should live in.
Well, I'm glad I could solve this video, guys. I'm
glad you could too, Dan. I really appreciate you. You did indeed break the tie. Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So last question then.
Sorry, Jonathan. Sorry, not sorry.
No. Okay, last thing we have to look at, y'all. Nobody's gonna have to break the tiebreaker on this one here, I think. But that's this. Tom Bombadil in the Rings of Power. There he is. Yellow boots, bright blue jacket, feather in his hat. Okay.
No, and but they got a hat, so I guess they got that part right. Good enough for Rings of Power.
He's there training Gandalf.
This looks like a very dour version of Tom Bombadil.
You think this picture looks dour? There's a bunch of other pictures, and he isn't happy.
Yeah,
a single one of them.
Yeah,
not happy.
He kind of looks like he's a Civil War general. Like he's looking at a map of some battlefield, and he's just like, "Oh man, it's not going to go good for us."
Not happy. There he is on the left.
Yeah,
you're right. They should have actually shown him smiling at least.
Like
we didn't get that.
Tom Bombadil was a merry old fellow.
He doesn't look very
not happy there. Not happy there.
So bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow, right? So
They're-
what's going on there?
The kind of yellow ochre brown.
No, they're not even yellow. Don't
know.
even give them that, Jonathan. They're not yellow boots.
Right,
No
so
one would look at those boots and say, "Boy, I like your yellow boots." Not a person living in Middle Earth would say that.
So do you know? I was going to
ahead.
say, do you know how they're going to how what it's essentially saying, how they're going to integrate him into the story? Did you read through that at all yet, Dan?
I didn't read this at all. I saw the
Okay.
pictures on Twitter. Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
X. I saw this
So-
on X. But
So Tom Bombadil is living on the edges of Hurin, Rhun over there in the
okay.
east, North of Mordor, right? And so that he is in, as they say here, he's in his summer cottage in Hurin, right?
I did not read that part. That makes me. I just threw up a little in my mouth. All right, Tom Bombadil. His
Literally,
domain is the forest, and he says once the forest stretched from the east to the west, so that a squirrel could run, basically from the area of Lothlorien through to the old forest, and now he's shrunk.
Yeah.
He doesn't have cottage homes outside the forest.
Right.
He is the forest. He's the master of the forest. The idea of him living in some barren place on the edge of Hurin is absurd and ridiculous, unless they were going to say that Hurin was forested at that time, but they clearly don't, because we can see there's no forest. So the very spirit that he's meant to embody, which is the spirit of the forest, is gone. His merriness, his laughter, gone.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, Tolkien never wrote
his
that
bright
he didn't have a
colors.
timeshare somewhere. Maybe he goes on vacations. Maybe he likes to surf a little bit.
Yeah, no, he's like those, your grandparents from Boston go to Florida in the winter. He just goes to Hurin in the summer.
That's right.
Here's what they said in our story. He has gone out to the lands of Hurin, which we learned used to be a sort of Edenic and Edenic like Eden, and green and beautiful. Again, everything used to be green and beautiful. Apparently, to them, they have to change everything. There, I believe there was a great chasm in the earth with a dam nearby in Hurin that flowed into this chasm and made it a wasteland. So I'm sure that's how it happened. But now it's sort of a dead wasteland. Tom has gone out there to see what's happened as he goes on his various wanderings. He's like, what's going on? I'm going to get involved in the world, which he never does. Right? The whole point of what they said at the Council of Elrond was Bombadil doesn't care. And even Tolkien in his letter, he said the point is like he's the ultra pacifist. He's not good. He's not evil. He just doesn't care. Yeah. And so you need people that
he cares about his realm. That's what he cares about.
He doesn't care about the greater world beyond. Right. The ring to him is a trinket. He sees through it. He does. Frodo is totally visible to him on it. And so at that point, if he doesn't care, then why would he care now in the Rings of Power about the rings? And that's where I fall on this here. Is it just doesn't make any sense to have him in here and they said there's going to be like a star chart on his ceiling because he's worried about the world, and he can like see things, and he was waiting for Gandalf in order to be there to help him when he arrives.
Oh my gosh. I just get dumber the more
let me read it again. When he finally crosses paths with a stranger, you could say he has a desire to try to keep the destruction that has happened there from spreading to his beloved lands in the west. He nudges the stranger along his journey, which he knows will eventually protect the larger natural world he cares about. So I'd say there, Tom Bombadil is slightly more interventionist than you see in the books, but only 5 or 10%. And I'm like,
they really said that? Who said 5 or 10%?
J.D. Payne.
Yeah.
It's 180 degrees. It's completely different because if he doesn't care about the one ring that's going to bring destruction to the entire world, Elrond says clearly in the books, we literally can't. He won't care. We could tell him the Dark Lord's going to bring destruction to the whole land. He'll forget about it. He'll literally forget that the ring that he has the ring. And if he doesn't care about that, then he's not going to be like, I wonder if I should wander off into a wasteland and see if I can figure out what's happening there. Because, I don't know, it's off of my land and I really care about that. And, there's a random stranger, wizardish guy. I should, set him up to be the protector of all the peoples of Middle Earth. I should give him his mission, because that's the thing I do with my bright colors.
Is this show just a sunk cost for Amazon at this point? That they're going to keep putting out seasons of this, even though no one watched the first season?
I think that they have to. I believe the contract says they have to do 5 seasons. Like there's something about that.
Wow.
Whoa.
I can't seem to like open
that
up
means
the right tab.
we get content for the next 5 years.
Yeah, right.
We'll
Wow,
bring
I
Dan
can't
on
open
once
up
a
the
year
right
to
tab at
tell
all.
us his reactions. Lots of
Oh,
bourbon necessary.
man.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is the one that makes me the saddest, that they're going to depict Tom Bombadil and just get him completely wrong, it looks like. And
Yeah.
it makes me really sad.
Yeah, I'd really be curious. I know you work at the BN. I know Kyle, when we did the podcast, he was a huge fan of Bombadil. And I'd
We
love
might
to
be
hear what he
working-
has to say.
We might be working on a Tom Bombadil article as we speak.
Oh,
So we'll have to
look.
check the Babylon Bee and see what that is today.
As we speak, which means that it's in the past when this gets published. So I'll
Yeah,
link it
so-
below if I can remember.
Yeah, go to babylonbee.com, search Tom Bombadil, and something will
And
come
you'll find
up.
it. Oh my gosh.
Excellent. I mean, look, they can't
So-
do any character right. Like Sauron is like a heartthrob to the Rings of Power people. Galadriel is this dour, girl boss that nobody likes. Even in Middle Earth, nobody likes her, let alone us. And so, what makes us think that they were going to have any chance of getting Tom Bombadil right?
Yeah.
Like Jonathan, you and I in our previous podcast about the changes made to the Jackson films, the fact that he left Bombadil out. We had a weird reaction. We had the same reaction, but it was weird because when answering the question of did it make for better cinema, and did we like the change, we actually liked the fact that they didn't put Bombadil in, because for us, the leaving out of Bombadil was a good thing, because we knew that even if Jackson had tried to do Bombadil, and I think he knew this too, Bombadil's kind of like a non sequitur in the middle of a story. He's a creature of fairy. That's my stance was he's Fae. He's the creature of the land of fairy more so than any other character in Middle Earth, and so he just doesn't fit. And so Jackson couldn't have done a good job with Bombadil. And so now these guys, they take the first shot at Bombadil, we're screwed. I mean, their story is screwed.
Yeah, and Jackson had said that like they had thought maybe like as they're walking along near the old forest, they'll have a shot of Bombadil, a feather and a hat bobbing along the way and hearing a song. And he's like, well, we didn't really get a chance to record it. And I'm like, yeah, that was probably a good idea too.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't have little nods towards fans in order to like say, look, it's Tom Bombadil. It's he's important. We're gonna throw him here, but he's not that important to actually have a scene in. So let's not do it. So the better choice is just to get rid of it. Like excising part of the story is better than changing the part of the story. And all the Rings of Power knows how to do is change the parts of the story. And I don't think it's not a surprise that honestly we think probably the two best characters are the ones that they created, which is Adar, and actually Disa wasn't that bad either. Like who they are as characters was more interesting than the rest of them. Well, but the other characters they created were pretty bad too. All the people in that town in Middle Earth that became Mordor. I can't remember the name of the town.
Yeah, the town that was so
Theo and the girl who falls in love with
remember.
the dark elf. I
Sure.
can't remember.
Yeah.
And Adar, the guy who plays Adar, is not coming back, right?
Right. We saw a shot of his face in the trailer. The new Adar.
New Adar.
Yeah.
New Adar is somewhere in here.
Oh, here, I have a question, Dan. What do you think that is? That big tentacle-y thingy that we see wherever it is, right around here somewhere, right there.
I'm going to guess that is the creature that's outside of Moria.
Yep.
What's that creature called?
The Watcher in the
The
Water.
Watcher in the Water.
Watcher in the
Yeah,
Water.
that's what I said too.
It's me too. All separately we said it.
But it's kind of what makes it cool. See, this is the problem with all these things, is that same thing that happened with Star Wars. They believe that the more that they show you, the more that you'll love the story.
Oh yeah.
And what's cool about, say the original trilogy of Star Wars, they kind of just mention the Clone Wars and then they move on.
Yeah.
And like what was cool is like in your imagination, you can go, what would that be like?
Yeah.
What was the old Republic? What there was a whole realm, there's a whole galaxy that was governed by this Jedi order. Like what, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then they show it to you and you're like, oh, that's not as cool as what I had in my head.
Exactly right.
Well, I think you're right. You're spot on. Like
So
our imaginations, these kind of stories are a place.
Yeah.
And so when you make things too specific, it just always loses some of the richness. So yeah, this is the new Adar. One of the best actors, maybe the best actor from the first season, was the guy that played Adar, and he left. And like I thought his scene with Galadriel was actually excellent. I really liked. In the first season, it was one of the few scenes in the whole season that I thought was good, where he was basically pointing out that Guy Ladriel, as written in the season 1 Rings of Power, was basically almost no different from him.
Right.
Yeah.
Like genocide was a thing that she was fine with.
Right.
So anyway, I liked his character. So R.I.P. whoever that guy was, and now it's a new Adar.
All right. Well, we can shut this down, guys. We don't have to talk about the Rings of Power anymore because we are.
Thank you,
Dan.
Thank you.
We are going to go into our membership section. What do we call it? Our extended podcast. I can remember. If you do want to become a member, I didn't even mention this at the beginning. I was so excited to talk to Dan. Go to theoneway.com/member. You get our extended podcast. You get our Discord full access. Although if you do want freeloader access, you can click on the link in the show notes below, and then get our access to freeloaders. You won't be able to ask any questions, which we do have a couple of. We will ask Dan on the other side of this extended podcast. However, we are going to give this extended podcast to everybody. So
today, the freeloaders,
in honor of Dan leaving us once again, we're going to have the extended podcast available.
That's what he does. He just leaves all the time. Just leaves.
That's all you know. You're the Celeborn of the Rings of Power. You just kind of leave and never come back. We don't know where you are, and actually we do. You're right here. So
Celeborn went out for milk one day and just never came back.
That's pretty much what happened.
You guys are always in my hearts, though. You're always in my heart.
Good, and we'll take a look at that Tom Bombadil story. I'm looking forward to it.
Did you think it would end this way? Oh, the journey doesn't end here. The grey rain curtain of this episode will be rolled back, and all will turn to silver glass. And then you hear it. Distant sounds like waves on diamond shores. A far greater episode under a swift sunrise.
Well, that was the most awkward transition ever.
Yeah, welcome back, freeloaders.
Wow.
Yeah, good to have you here. This is usually where we let our hair down a little bit and talk more freely, but I don't know if we can do that now.
Yeah.
The hair that Dan has left, at least.
Yeah. Oh, pot calling the kettle black there, sir.
I know. Well, mine's just turning big and gray and ugly. All right, so I think the biggest questions that folks had for you, Dan, because most of the people on our Discord, they've been around a long time, and they've gone back and they've binged a lot of the stuff that we have in our Discord, meaning our extended members, which, guys, freeloaders, again, theoneway.com/member, and you can go to Patreon, theoneway.com/Patreon, and sign up there too. You get all the same access and the same content. Do you miss going through Lord of the Rings in depth, like another story of Middle Earth or things like that? Is it something that you really enjoyed and would do again? I think they're really saying, like, would you come back to when are you finally going to come back to the podcast is what they're asking.
Oh, that's the question. Oh, yeah.
Well, the question is, did you enjoy it? Right. Yeah. Well, it's a leading question.
Yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it. It almost kind of felt like, to me, like Bible study. Like
which is a good thing for Dan.
We're all gathering around a text, and we're learning from it, and we're encouraging one another and blessing each other and giving each other insights to life and wisdom, and it's all coming from the pen of some guy who lived before our time,
right? And
it's just interesting to me that across cultural differences and time, that somebody lived a while ago, and he went through similar things. Like, obviously he went through the war. He had tragedies in his life. He lost friends, and he wrote this epic legend that kind of touches on all those themes. And when we have that in our life, it's basically what I'm trying to say is he wrote like another Bible.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
A nerd Bible, maybe.
Yeah, a nerd Bible, and being able to study that in depth with other people, that's just really special to me.
Yeah, it's quality literature, and with all quality literature, when you go back to it, like people do this with Shakespeare, they do it with C.S. Lewis, they do it with Chesterton, they do it with a lot of writers over the ages, great authors, and Tolkien's work is stuff you can get back to.
Yeah,
you can really dig into, unlike most of the stuff that's put out today.
Yeah.
I doubt 100 years from now, anyone will know who J.D. Payne was.
Yeah. Hey, you guys want to read through Game of Thrones next? No,
You know, we'd actually read through it faster than George R. R. Martin would finish it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that guy, he will never
man.
finish it. He will die before he did. He'll pull a
Yeah.
Robert Jordan and die
Yeah,
before he
that's not
finishes
going to
his
happen. I don't think he knows how to finish it now. I think probably he saw the end of the TV show and he's like, "Oh, that was my idea."
Except
Except it wasn't. But yeah.
I think you're right.
So after reading then through the Silmarillion and through On Fairy Stories, which one? Look, and this is a weird question. I don't know if this really works. Which one did you enjoy more going through in detail? Which one did you get more out of? I would say. Because those are the two major things that we did when you were enjoying.
And while he's thinking about it, I will point out to our listeners that on Fairy Stories, we thought we were going to cover that in like 2 sessions, 1 or 2 sessions.
What did it end up being? Like 7?
6? I think 6.
6, yeah, 5, and then a recap.
Yeah, 6 sessions, which because it was so, and then of course Silmarillion we did for a whole half a year. I think
it was 40 episodes or so. Yeah,
more than half a year. Okay.
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer because they're 2 totally different things, and I enjoyed them both for what they were. I really enjoyed On Fairy Stories because I feel like that's where you really learn what Tolkien was all about and why write a fairy tale. What am I doing this for?
Yeah.
So you get a real insight into who Tolkien was and why he did what he did and why he felt it was important, why he felt that this is something that this is his life's work. Why would he spend his life doing this?
Yeah.
Right. And his argument that it wasn't just for children. You know, that's nothing wrong with writing stories for children. The Hobbit was clearly a story for children. Mm-hmm. He said as much, but the Lord of the Rings was not, and that fairy stories are not just for children. And it was really, I agree with you. It was one of those, when I first read his essay, essentially it's a shorter essay that became a speech that one of the colleges in Oxford, and then that became a longer essay that we covered. But when I first read it, I was just kind of blown away. I didn't really expect it to be as deep, especially philosophically, as it was. So anyway, I agree with you. I really liked it. Now the Silmarillion, as a guy who studies history a lot, Silmarillion has a special place in my heart. So I think I probably, in the end of the day, I'd land on the Silmarillion being more fun for me. But I really love On Fairy Stories.
Yeah, and Dan, did you know that we did an unfinished tale while you were gone too? I know you haven't been following along as much as before, but we did The Mariner's Wife, Eldarion and Erendis, which is Tolkien's most complete work outside of The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, fiction work, right? He wrote more of a comprehensive story in that than he did in pretty much anything else. Everything else, even the Fall of Gondolin, Beren and Luthien, it wasn't a prose endeavor necessarily the entire time, and it had to be brought together into one story as one complete piece, whereas this was his complete writing, and it just kind of ends. But we spent I think 7 episodes on that one.
Right, and it's a story that takes place in Numenor. So it's what the Rings of Power wishes it could be.
Yeah, and then we spent 2 episodes where I essentially laid out what I think a 5 or 6 seasons of what the show would have looked like and how you actually finish it with because it ends. It's a very sad story, but you have to try and find a positive note, I think, to end on to make it feel like it's going somewhere, and it does go somewhere. It ends with essentially like they do fight Sauron in this one. You just don't really know yet that he is, but it's the start of Mordor, the real start of Mordor, the real, like they start building Barad-dûr near the end of it. But
no, Mordor, you stick a sword in the ground and you turn it.
I know. It's so easy, Michael. It's so easy.
Then it starts a reaction that requires someone to have dug trenches for the last year.
I just want to know how they're going to say
it's a volcano with steam. So
like did Bombadil not notice this in his wanderings, throughout the earth? Like he could have just gone and helped out with that sword a little bit. But so like I enjoy going through some of these tales. Michael and I were actually going to be doing The Hobbit next to it.
Right. What we were thinking of doing, interestingly, was Tolkien's sort of most carefree tale, followed by his saddest tale. So we're going to read The Hobbit, and then we're going to follow that up with
Children of Hurin.
Children of Hurin. I started to the House of Hurin. My brain.
Okay.
So we're gonna do his children's story, followed by his what is like deep tragedy, as we talked about when we were covering the Silmarillion. Which the Silmarillion has pieces of the Children of Hurin in it, but it doesn't have the full.
It doesn't have the full story. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, it's been a pleasure
It's been real.
as usual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this has been a good time. It's been fun.
Yeah, I know. One
Thank you
day,
for letting me invade.
Yeah, absolutely.
can we get you back at least for a recap for the Rings of Power and force you to watch it all so that you can enjoy the panel too?
More torment. Not every episode. just one time at the end, maybe.
Yeah,
Man.
He'll think about it. He'll think
Well,
about
I'll
it.
think about that.
You can just watch our recaps and then watch the last episode.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
what I'll do.
You know, then you can enjoy Schadenfreude, right? True pain.
I have to admit, it
Enjoying others'
was
pain.
quite surprising to me how many people leave comments about that. Like, there are so many people that really hate, and they've never seen it. They're like, "We're so glad you guys watched the Rings of Power,
So we didn't have
so
to.
we don't have to."
Exactly. It's totally true. Look at the comments. They're like, yeah, you guys, thanks for doing that for us. I get a good laugh out of you guys having to watch it.
Yeah, and they still say deliberately, like, we didn't.
Yeah.
We won't watch it, but we're glad you guys did it for us.
Yeah.
So you could.
Yeah.
Really, all I want out of watching anything about the Rings of Power is see what stupid phrase they've inserted into each episode. Like we will never sweep them like salt from the table.
The table.
And you're like,
Okay. Right.
Well, they
that's
did
only after
create
they-
some enduring memes. Like, give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Yeah.
Is now a meme across because of how bad it is. I don't think maybe they don't understand that. Maybe that didn't never click with them. But it was so stupid that
Yeah.
Ships
Well,
look up.
as we know, Dan, though a dog may bark at the moon, he will never bring it down.
Mhm.
And where there is love, it is never truly dark.
It's just like Tolkien wrote
the sea is always right.
The sea is always right.
Oh, that was my favorite one. Yeah, the sea is
Oh, I
always
thought it
right.
was okay. Well, I can't believe we know all this just because we have to go over and over again. But
Look,
every time I go on a boat, at least I know why I'm not sinking.
That's right.
Mhm.
The book because the
I
boat
just
is looking up.
and I keep looking up because I have to make sure that I'm
You
helping
don't
the boat.
sink. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how boats are
It's a
powered.
joint effort with you and the boat. Eyes up, everybody! Eyes up. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh my goodness. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. I hope you extended the I hope you enjoyed the extended podcast that we got into a little more detail here. Dan, good to see you. We'll have you back again sometime.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next week. We may take a week off. I have to work it out with Michael. We may take a week off and then get into the House of Eorl, the appendix in The Return of the King, talking about the War of the Rohirrim for a couple of weeks, I think.
Right.
And then we'll do The Hobbit.
Because we're going to talk about what Tolkien actually wrote, and then we'll talk about what the anime side of the world comes up with.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody. See you next week.
Take care.
See you, Dan.
All right. Thank you. See ya.